You've been a sneakerhead pretty much your entire life. What made you choose fashion?
Huh. That's a good question. Why did I didn't, I don't think I chose fashion. That's the weird thing. I didn't even go to school for fashion design. I went to school for graphic design. And I was printing on t-shirts, and then, the story goes that the 555 Soul Store on Lafayette bought the t-shirt that I made off my back, but I wasn't trying to become a fashion designer. Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but that's how it started. I was wearing a t-shirt that I hand printed at Parsons School of Design, and the manager of 555 was like, yo, I like that shirt, would you get that? And I was like, I made it. And he's like, make 12 and we'll sell them at 555. And that's how Staples started. And then that turned into that. So the manager of Union then saw the shirt at 555 and he's like, yo, I want some of that shirt too. And so he bought 12, and then 555 bought 24, and then Union bought 36. And that's how Staples started. So I don't know, it's just, I don't really consider myself like a fashion designer. I'm more of like a communication designer, and I use fashion as a medium for communicating currently.
How did you break into the sneaker industry then?
So that's a great story. You mean into like actually designing shoes?
Designing sneakers, making your own shoes, and working with them, yeah.
I mean, the first one was Nike that I got to work with. And at the time, I was art director of the Fader magazine. So I was designing like the first 20 issues of the Fader magazine. And part of that was I got to write articles a couple times here and there. They let me sort of input in some articles. And this is back in 1998, so you're gonna remember this time, but this is where Nike Japan, COJP, if you remember that Nike COJP term, this was a thing that Nike Japan was doing where they would release like Japan only, 100 pieces, only at Atmos type shit. And you couldn't get it anywhere else. And the only way to get them was to parallel import them, which is how a Flight Club was even born, you know what I mean? And so I wanted to know why Nike Japan was doing that. Like, if you know it's selling out, why wouldn't you sell them at my local Foot Locker and Athlete's Foot? And I wanted to ask Nike Japan why they were doing this. And so I convinced the publishers of the Fader to send me to Tokyo to interview Nike Japan and get the story. And they're like, that's a dope story, let's do that. So I went to Japan, blind, knowing nobody.
What year was that?
98.
98 in Japan.
Yes, 98 in Japan. Domainy had vintagekicks.com back then, not Flight Club yet. But yeah, I went out there, finally finagled a meeting with Nike, finally finagled a meeting with the guy who controls COJP, the guy who determines we're gonna do the Air Kukinis in honeycomb yellow and black and sell it only in Atmos. 30
Wow,
pair.
would I love to be the fly on that wall for that conversation.
That was a dope conversation. And that's actually ironically like, he was really interested in telling the story because nobody like was caring about what he was doing. There was one man, one dude that was controlling this. And he was like, yo, you know who you need to meet if you want to get the real story on why we do this? I'm going to introduce this guy named Hiroshi Fujiwara. And I had no idea who that was back then. Nobody did, you know? So I was like, all right, I'll meet this dude, Hiroshi. And that's how my relationship with Hiroshi began, and we became best of friends since then too. But it was that meeting with Nike where he was like, after I did the interview, he was like, well, hold up now. You have a clothing line called Staple. You have a design studio. You design the Fader, and you're obviously a sneakerhead. He's like, we should do some work together. And I was like, yeah, we should. And then that followed up with a trip to Beaverton, and that was, the opening of the Iron Curtain for me. That was when I went from becoming like a pure fan to behind, the curtain and seeing how everything goes down. Which sometimes, to be honest, to this day, it's a double-edged sword because it's fun being a fan of the industry. It's fun just like hunting for shoes and buying shoes and not knowing like the marketing strategies and the PowerPoints that go into it and all like the politics and shit, And now that I know it all, it's sort of like, I have to remind myself how fun it is to be a sneakerhead still. I have to purposely remind myself. Sixth grade is when Jordan 3 came out. And even, I was buying the Jordan 1s, and even before that I was buying the Bo Jacksons and the McEnroe trainers, the Revolutions.
I had one guy offer me like 100, you know what I mean, for like everything I own. And I was just like, wow, that's nice. But, and it's a nice number, but I don't know. I just can't